Hello fellow art nerds, welcome back to another video. Today I will be drawing Norval Morrisseau in a cute cartoon anime-like style while telling you some fun facts you may or may not know. Morrisseau is a Canadian artist born on March 14, 1931 in Greenstone, Ontario. He's considered by many to be the grandfather or Mishomis of contemporary Indigenous art in Canada. His unique art style is known for pushing the boundaries of visual storytelling, having spiritual themes, and using bright colors. Morrisseau is Anishinaabe, which is part of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. He was born during a time when the Indigenous community wasn't allowed to practice traditional ceremonies, was forced to attend residential schools, and wasn't allowed anywhere off of a reserve. Morrisseau was the oldest of 5 siblings and kept with his Anishinaabe tradition by going to live with his grandparents at the reserve in Lake Nipigon, Ontario. Morrisseau was sent to the residential school St. Joseph's Indian Residential School in Fort William at the age of 6. He left the school after 2 years with deep emotional scars. According to the school's curator, Greg Hill, Morrisseau was not like other children in his community. The young artist preferred to spend his time in the company of elders, listening and learning, or completely alone, drawing. He had an interest in petroglyphs, a form of print where you carve into rock and birch bark scroll images, though he never took any art classes. He wanted to draw what he'd heard about or seen, such as the spirit being the Thunderbird, but was told not to by his community and relatives since you weren't allowed to share Anishinaabe ceremonial knowledge. At around the age of 23, he became very sick with tuberculosis and was sent to a sanatorium in Fort William, which is where people go when they have very dangerous illnesses. At the sanatorium, he met Harriet Kagagamek, who was from a remote Northern Cree community. They married in the 1950s and moved to Beardmore, where he began to devote more time to art. He mostly painted on birch bark baskets made by Harriet's mother and other objects. Initially, Morrisseau didn't make enough money on his art to work on it full-time, so at around 1958, he found a job at a gold mine and moved with Harriet near Red Lake, Ontario. There, Morrisseau met Dr. Joseph Weinstein, a doctor who trained as an artist in Paris. Joseph's wife, Esther Weinstein, was also an artist and saw Morrisseau's paintings in a general store, one of them being Untitled, Thunderbird Transformation. Fascinated by the paintings, she asked the store owner to invite the artist to their home so they could meet. Morrisseau was welcomed in the Weinstein house, and the three discussed art for hours while he read their art books. Joseph gave Morrisseau some high-quality art supplies like paper and gouache paints, and encouraged him to be a professional artist rather than a producer of tourist souvenirs. Morrisseau was inspired by his meeting with the couple and had introduced him to a bigger understanding of art. Around 1958, Morrisseau was introduced to Susan Ross, a printmaker and painter from Thunder Bay, Ontario. She specialized in painting portraits of local Indigenous people in a post-impressionist style. They became friends, and Morrisseau would send his paintings to Ross and relied on her to sell them. With the money he made from them, Ross would buy Morrisseau art supplies and a tape recorder so he could record the Anishinaabe stories told by his elders. Over time, Morrisseau grew more confident as an artist and his knowledge about European art grew. In 1960, Morrisseau met Selwyn Dewdney, an anthropologist and artist. At the time, Dewdney was recording pictograph sites in the area, which are areas that have Indigenous art on cave walls. Dewdney introduced Morrisseau to his favorite modern artworks, such as Diego Rivera's Mexican mural paintings, Salvador Dali's Surrealism, and the Cubism of Pablo Picasso and Henri Matisse. However, while the Weinsteins gave Morrisseau modern painting supplies, Dewdney encouraged Morrisseau to continue painting with his more traditional mediums, like birch bark. In return, Morrisseau shared his knowledge about rock art with Dewdney, who studied and wrote about the subject. Their meeting tells us a bit of why Morrisseau wanted to educate Canadians about Indigenous art and culture. In 1962, Morrisseau's work was exhibited at the Pollock Gallery in Toronto. This marked the first time an Indigenous artist had shown their artwork in a contemporary gallery in Canada. The media called it a new development in Canadian art, and a mix of the paintings sold on the first day, and the exhibition made Morrisseau an instant artist celebrity. Morrisseau often traveled back and forth between Beardmore and Toronto to sell paintings and get commissions. In 1965, the Glenbow Foundation in Calgary bought 11 of Morrisseau's artworks, including Joe Go Away Moose Dream. This huge sale led to more exhibitions, including the Musée National des Beaux-Arts de Quebec. Morrisseau was one of the 9 Indigenous artists who were commissioned to create art for the Indians of Canada Pavilion in Expo 67 in Montreal. He painted a mural which showed bear cubs being nursed by Mother Earth. Because of that commission, he met Herbert T. Schwarz, who owned the Galerie Cartier in Montreal. Schwarz organized Morrisseau's very first international exhibit in 1967, and some of the pieces were traveled as far as Rhode Island in 1968 and the south of France in 1969. This is when Morrisseau gained the nickname the Picasso of the North. In 1971, fellow artist Daphne Odjig founded Professional Native Indian Artists Incorporated, or PNIAI, which came to be known as the Indian Group of Seven. Morrisseau was one of the members. The group promoted and supported Indigenous artists across Canada and worked towards changing their public image. In 1972, the Royal Ontario Museum, or the ROM, purchased 11 paintings by Morrisseau, making the first time the museum had ever had contemporary paintings. In the fall of 1978, Morrisseau was given the Order of Canada Medal to show his contributions to Canadian art. He had also been given the Canada Centennial Medal in 1968 and had been made a member of the Royal Canadian Academy of Art in 1973. In the 1980s, Morrisseau had clearly inspired a whole new generation of artists. The Art Gallery of Ontario created an exhibit in 1984 that displayed Morrisseau's artwork along with other artists that were inspired by his style, such as Daphne Odjig, Carl Ray, Joachim Kagamick, Roy Thomas, and Blake de Bossage. The show was titled Norval Morrisseau and the Emergence of the Image Makers, and it showcased Morrisseau's significance as an artist and contribution to the new art movement he created called the Woodland School. For more than a decade, Morrisseau suffered from Parkinson's disease. This heavily affected the way he would paint, and he found it difficult to complete artwork the way he used to. In 2006, the National Gallery of Canada held a retrospective exhibit for him. The following year, on December 2, 2007, Morrisseau passed away due to complications related to his Parkinson's disease. He remains an extremely influential figure of Canadian Indigenous artwork and still holds his title as the grandfather of contemporary Indigenous art in Canada.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Please share it with a fellow art nerd, and if you love receiving quality and free art education, subscribe.
If you'd like to support the channel and the creation of free arts education, become a member on Patreon for working files, behind-the-scenes posts, and discounts on our class offerings. If you enjoyed this video, here's a couple other videos you can check out next.